Hi, I'm Zainab-Fahim, and this is my video demonstration of my final year project, Ally Arc. It is a research project based on an integrated approach to special education using large language model and human-centric reinforcement learning. The basic gist is a combination to solve issues in special education using two main components, that is the large language model and human centric reinforcement learning. So, why did I choose this topic? Um, Basically, in modern education, as much as it has advanced, there are many issues. The main issue is that education hasn't changed ever since it has started. So imagine in a traditional classroom, the desks are there, teacher is in front, the teacher is teaching, but there is less individuality, there's less attention of the teacher to every student. So because every student has a unique learning and their own learning curve and their own potential, this individuality is not focused on, especially when it comes to special education needs. Students with SEN, special education need specialized attention, specialized looking into their work, and specialized teaching techniques. That leads to personalization of the teaching techniques and learning methods. Each student have their own technique of learning and progressing from their own, but that is not there in special education. At the same time, that takes a lot of time as well, because focusing on each student personally in a huge classroom would take a lot of time. That is another issue. And then moving on, we say there are bright students, but at the same time, how do they learn these complex concepts when they are set in a same classroom? Each student has basically different learning curves and learning abilities. So transitioning these challenges to the digital realm hasn't been a silver bullet either, because engaging students through screen often feels like tough and alienating, and the feedback which should come and immediately affect their learning atmosphere comes a bit delayed. So let's move to what is the solution. What does this project give as the answer to these problems? So this is the high level architecture of the proposed solution. So it's an entire high level architecture diagram. So in the front end you have the chatbot UI and the dashboard UI, which is the client facing, and under that there is the application, data management, and AI and learning analytics layer. So obviously, the chatbot is what's interacting with the students. So student can have their own profiles and inputs, and each chatbot session, which each chatbot UI has its session, and each session also has managing the profile. So each student has their own profile, which learning styles, personalization, feedback from teacher, basically everything. Every time a student logins to the chatbot, they get all those information is processed. The next part is the dashboard. So dashboard, obviously, once authenticated, has its management of profile for the teacher as well. And then once again, all of that is handled by the AI layer of personalization engine. So once that is there, there is also the input processing, content delivery, command execution, and feedback management. Starting from the end, feedback management. So each feedback is saved and reported in the dashboard, through the dashboard and what the teacher says, and that is going to the reinforcement learning and the model which interacts with the student which works with the personalization engine as well, uh, has the chatbot UI where the data from the dashboard comes into the is reported and stored. The feedback from it is stored, and then that's once again passed the AI and learning analytics layer and passed back to the student. um, Once again, content repository of what the student chats of the uh, content which is for basically for the data set, and also interaction login. So all of this is connected with the input processing of how the student chats, what are the feedback the teacher gets, all of it. So that is by the content delivery. And once again, all those are saved in the content repository. And from the reinforcement learning, whatever the new changes are once again passed to the content delivery from the content repository. Uh, Quickly, let's go through the concept diagram as well. So, Alayak has the main idea, which is uh, fine tuning the GPT 3.5 turbo model. So, and then for that, we had to have data preparation, which once again get educational content from websites and use that for fine tuning to create the data set. And then that is used to fine tune the GPT 3.5 turbo model, and then an academic assistance for the chatbot is formed. So the chatbot integration is through WhatsApp, and that has engagement, assessment, subject help, visualization, and basically other features. Student interaction and support. So a student is getting help from the chatbot for grading the student's work, giving assistance to subject related help, assessment and feedback. So automatically grading, because whatever the teacher has inputted the questions can be graded, and also all of the interactions are saved in the dashboard so the teacher can give feedback. So that's where the reinforcement layer come, where it's a learning signal for the chatbot, and based on what the educator gives as insights, that improves the interaction of this chatbot with the student. So then security is obviously there are data protection mechanisms of student information. Personalization, adaptation, once again, this feedback based on each student is saved, and so that the teacher can use that education style to understand and develop the large language model. So the goal is mainly to customize the learning experience. So that is from data preparation to personalization, WhatsApp as the central hub, which connects the student to the rest of the system, and feedback loop and security as a foundation. Let's go through the code of the project starting from the dashboard. So this is the main organization which has many the code of many of the part of my project. Starting in the dashboard, so the dashboard I've deployed it on Firebase hosting, and also I've got a CI/CD pipeline running, while also making sure that the database and the backend is set well. So this is a React application. I'm using the core UI library to set up all these dashboard components. So the main component here is the the student component, where each the student history and all of it is saved. So each student has their own dedicated page, and there's a chat history component within that, and that component basically gets the feedback from the teacher for each of the students chat, and then that is stored back in the database. We go back to the dashboard. The deployed link is also there. We can take a look at that as well. And it has basic rules of safety concerns and other pages taken into consideration as well. So this is the main dashboard page. You can add questions, custom questions. So for each grade, chapter name, question, description, and model answer. Then the generated question, you can enter the chapter name and basic context of the subject matter to be questioned, and questions will be automatically generated. You can add students, and for each student there is a dedicated page. So if you see for this student, we can see all the scores of it is saved, basic details of the student, and also the chat history. So this is what the student saying, this is what the chatbot saying, and I can save in some feedback, and that will be stored back in the database. Moving on to the next part, video. So this is the chatbot part, which basically has the flow and the function. So there are main flows, which is the main flows and subflows. So if you see here, this directs it to the subflows as per the requirements. All the messages are saved in the database. And if you go to the breakdown, so this is the assignment where each questions assigned to that student is looked through and saved in the database. Also the answers are evaluated and helped when the student have any issues. So here the breakdown function, that's where if the student have any questions and queries, that's where it's directed. Here is where the fine-tuned language model is there. Visualize is based on research identify that many students need help in understanding concepts, so visualization help autistic students. So if you go see, these are the functions that are there. The main function is the breakdown function. The breakdown function basically takes the fine-tuned model, and each of the feedback that this assigned to that student for that chatbot, for that chat instance, is sent as a system prompt, and so the chatbot communicates in that way. And then obviously create message instance, and these are various to maintain the flow of the chatbot. The next is the notebook. So this is where the data set is there, and for this I use Crew AI. So I use Crew AI to format the data, and yeah, I use the HTML to text to scrape the data and pass it through multiple agent AI framework, which is Crew AI. And for each of that I scrape the data and got it in this format. But for OpenAI, to fine tune OpenAI models, I had to pass it through a different format. So that's why I use this script. Once again, going through each of it and then converting it into the right format, which is over here. This is the dataset format. If we go through this file, we can see that as well. The next thing is, once that is done, I check the format through the script, made sure that everything is in the correct format before passing it to fine tuning, and then I evaluated the model. If you can see over here, there is a difference in the base model, and this is the fine tune model, and this is the base model. So this shows the effect of fine tuning. So over here, obviously this is the fine-tuned way, because the system prompt, and then for each the user and the user's prompt, and then the assistant and the assistant content basically. It's also worth by mentioning that I used llama model initially. So I used the chat llama 7b model, but I even quantized it and passed it through bits and bytes, and here are the training configurations and the supervised fine-tuning. Passed it to the base model, which is the llama 7b chat model, and then pass it through the tokenizer, and then set the training arguments, all of it, and then formatted the data set, pass it through the trainer. These were the results. This is the data set, and this was the response, which was quite good actually. But when I pass it through the chatbot, that's when the issue came. Okay, so moving to the next part, which is the chatbot Flask application. So this is worthwhile mentioning because this is where I decided to change from Llama to GPT-5 type of model. As you can see, I've basically got a UI for the chatbot, and you can see when I say hi, it gives this response: "Help me in my homework. Yeah, I'm happy to help." So digestive system, um, it basically gives just the response. It's not complete, it repeats the same response. So over here also you can see that, um, but then when I remove it all and try again, there is this literally so many glitches. It doesn't under So I made a spelling mistake here. It doesn't understand because it doesn't think of it as a chat application. As you can see here, I've said lack of continuity and handling, and complex explanation is hard. So the thing is that it doesn't work well with chatbot applications. So now let's go to the demonstration. So this is the dashboard, and you can add the student details. So from the contact number to the name for the caregiver's number and name, and also set the grade. Once you get that, there is also a checking to see whether all the details have been entered properly. And once that's done, you can go and check to the page. Each student have their own specific page. So in that own specific page, there is the details of that student. um, then going to question generation, you can generate question or have custom questions. If you're generating questions, you can just set the grade, score, the chapter name, and give the context. So over here, basically I'm just like, the teacher can copy, okay, this is the textbook. Let me take a chunk of paragraph from this textbook, and questions are formulated for that level of grade 6 and for that topic, right? So you can just take and copy paste, and that will automatically generate the questions. um, so when once that's done, you can click generate questions, uh, and then that's done over here. So here we are putting custom questions. So this is generated question. Now we're going to custom questions. Here we can again, once again, set the name, grade, score, and also have to give a description to the question. So this is a bit more tedious task because you have to put in the question and the description and the answer as well. So once that is done, so then you can add that as well to the database. So if you can see, the number of questions and students have been increased over here. uh, yeah, that's what it is over here. So the number of questions are also higher because now it generates like quite a few questions. So now going back to the chatbot, so the teacher has added the question, added a student, and now when the student tries to log in with that name and all, it works. So if you see, the student says, okay, first the student wants to work on the assignment. So here you can see this is that student, Shane Watson, and then it goes to the questions assigned for this student, and then it automatically scores for that, and then goes to the next amount of questions, and it loops through as many questions. Now if you can see, this is about respiration. That was the generated questions, and there is also a model answer and description if the child doesn't know how to answer that question. All of those are provided. Now for example, if the child wants to um, stop the assignments and just get help from subject matter, you can even break down or visualize concepts. So if you want to break down, like understand concepts which are hard, so the student just learned about respiration. Now student wants to know how does plant respirate, because uh, like they don't have lungs visibly. which is a valid question to ask. Uh, and then that's where the generated, the fine-tuned large language model gives this answer. If you can see, like own mini lung system, and they absorb in and out uh, small holes. So the language used for this is uh, also more fine-tuned for the purpose of educating kids with special education needs. um, Once again, questions. So once they thanks, they ask how are the questions, whether if everything is solved, um, and yeah. So this basically ends the conversation. So now this has been done and all those data is recorded. So if we go back to the dashboard and go here, you can see this chat history if you remember before this. So all these chat history is saved. The teacher can view the questions and say, okay, this is missing, that is missing. And the teacher can give feedback. For now, the teacher is saying, need more help in relating concepts to real world concepts, real world scenarios. And when the teacher submits that, that goes back and is saved. So then if we go back to the Firebase, you can see that data is saved and this feedback is saved. So that's basically it for the demonstration where all of it works together, and the next time probably the chatbot chats, this is what there'll be a more fine-tuned for this purpose. The main factors worth mentioning is the evaluation of Alayak's AI model. So this is a very new and specialized and unique approach for AI models, which has its own challenges with it. So one is the lack of benchmark of education chatbots to measure this against. Even when you take large language models based mainly based benchmark based on their ability to code, answer general knowledge, answer probably do calculation, image generation, understanding image, which are all great, but not the purpose of this chatbot. This chatbot is the chatbot which I fine tuned, and its main purpose is to make it a more interactive discussion with the student, kind of like a teaching and learning process. Not exactly in learning high concepts, but because anyway the teacher is there on the client side to give feedback, but also to have a conversation and interactivity with the student, which is obviously hard to measure except by human evaluation. So, excuse the lack of benchmarks and stats on this evaluation, which is understandable because of this unique perspective this application chatbot is coming from. Another important point to mention is the transition of large language model due to conversational abilities. Initially, as mentioned earlier, initially I used the Llama 7p model and fine tuned it, but that did not give the required conversational uh, outlook because it wasn't able to have a conversation. The way generation of text versus conversing generation of text is completely different, which I gathered through this research, but that was too late with the time constraints. So I had to move to GPT, which is a more conversational. Taking initial standards of Llama model, it didn't have per se conversation, but it was able to fine tune it had other abilities which made it more favorable. So these are the evaluation of llama model which I fine-tuned and evaluated as well. And then when I tried it with real-world application of chatting conversation, that's when the issue started rising. So this is the Turbo 3.5 using as the base model. As you can see, the training loss is really negligible, but the validation is quite a bit. So that must be due to overfitting, I guess. But once again, this use case is completely different, and so for validation, uh, it can not always respond as expected. Then again, there is the details regarding the fine-tune model. So I use three epochs and 754,777 three tokens were trained, and I use for one batch. And once again, I use the GPT 3.5 turbo model, and I use multiple seed which was randomly generated at the beginning. Uh, so in terms of future improvements, obviously I can have multi-language support, so there can be more uh, languages implemented, so the student can chat in a more for a wider range of audiences. Enhance AI personalization. Obviously, there's a space for a more personalized and more um, unique for each academic student, not only just academic but also for the psychological state of the student. A more enhanced AI algorithm. So broader curriculum coverage. So this covers basic concepts from overall touching different subjects, but not for a broad range, and especially not for high levels of education. So probably make this a bit more interactive using virtual labs, simulation, ER based, all to make learning more engaging. As you can see, all these are um, enhancements of the current system due to the time limit of this project.